Welcome to Around the Form, today's FormFest closing session. I'm Kirsten Wyatt, and I'm pleased to be your host for this exciting wrap-up event. Today, I am joined by four civic tech leaders. Arielle Kennan from the Beck Center at Georgetown University, where she leads the Digital Benefits Network, which supports government in delivering public benefits, services, and technology that are accessible, effective, and equitable. Ayushi Roy is from the New Practice Lab at New America, where she serves as the Chief Program Officer. New Practice Lab works to improve family economic security and well being through the way social policy is designed and delivered. Brian Whitaker is from HOPS, the Humans of Public Service, which tells the story of government employees, past, present, and future, who desire to make a positive impact on their communities. And Danny Mintz from Code for America. He's the Director of Safety Net Policy, where he works to improve access to public benefits. If you've ever watched a sports recap show, today's session format will be familiar to you. But instead of analyzing plays and showing highlights from a game, our team is going to break down what they heard and saw today at FormFest 2025. All day, they've been attending sessions and taking notes on the most quotable quotes, chat discussions, and general vibes. And now they'll share what they've learned with all of you. I'll post some questions to them using our four conference themes of design, innovation, accessibility, and interoperability. And then they'll each have 1 minute max to opine on the question with some of the knowledge that they gained today from FormFest sessions. We really want all of you to be active in the chat, so if you hear a hot take that you agree or disagree with, let us know and share your opinions too. So let's get started. We're going to start with design, and I want to hear what is the most important feature of a good form: speed, accuracy, user happiness, or something else? And Arielle, you're up first.
Great to be here today, and thanks for having us, Kirsten. I love the last session I was in, which was Sevilla, talking about their form tracker that they built with Michigan. Not only does it help people know that they've actually completed the task and where they're at in the process, it actually celebrates their success. And I just love seeing that on a form.
Ayushi, what do you think?
Hey, it's so great to be here. I had a great day watching so many of you and all the great work that you're doing. I think the top design feature of a form for me, especially coming out of today, is actually the no form. I think the world that we're moving into that allows for either AI agents to fill out forms or that allows automated eligibility, pulling from means tested information and other program administrative data is sort of, I think, the top.
And Brian, what do you think?
So, to quote the great American poet Kid Cudi, I'm in the pursuit of happiness, baby. So, I would say I've got to go with my feds at CMS. They built for repeatable use, they built for efficiency. The demos were hitting today. So, I've really got to call them out for all the energy and effort they put in on gathering that metadata and creating indexes. Big shout out to them.
All right, and close us out on design, Danny.
Oh man, I'm going to be choosing favorite children all day. I think the most important thing about a form is that it work. There is, the form is an entry point to often a really critical experience of trying to get help meeting a basic need. One of the panels that I attended that I was really struck by was Sean Johnson's from the Center for Civic Design, where he walked us through how a form that can look like a very beautiful and elegant experience for a sighted user can be really maddening for folks who are using assistive software like screen readers if the form hasn't been thoughtfully designed with those users and needs in mind. So I think ultimately it's about can somebody use this form to get the thing that they need?
Next up, we're going to talk about innovation. And Brian, you are on deck. Our question today is AI in government forms exciting or risky? Brian, start us off.
So, as the geriatric millennial of this group, I think I've got to go with exciting. You know, um, one of the sessions that I attended today, I think these fine folks are out in the Bay Area. They're using optical character recognition to really help address receiving and consuming so many paper-based forms. And I think, putting generative AI to the side, I think there's a lot of good uses for AI just to streamline processes, automate wherever possible to best serve the people. So I'll go with OGAI as exciting.
Danny, you're next.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of exciting uses of AI in government forums. I was really impressed by a deployment from the New Jersey Office of Innovation that used AI to analyze open text information on feedback forums and give actionable feedback back to agencies on their website. I think there's a lot of value there and a lot of excitement to be had. If you ask me about other parts of the benefits journey outside of forums, I may have some spicier takes.
We can save those for happy hour. Okay, Ariel, AI in government forums, exciting or risky?
I thought a great example from today was New York State, who has a relatively new design system. They've built it in Figma, and they've actually made it so you can go lower fidelity and work with people who are non-designers, but then you can also go higher fidelity and turn it into actual code. And they're using AI to generate that code. But one of the big takeaways from that session was that designers need to stay in the loop. So AI conversations talk a lot about a human in a loop. They're talking about a very specific human or set of humans, which are designers, and making sure as that code comes out, not only are engineers reviewing it, but designers are actually making sure it stays true to the design system. And I thought, what an exciting way to be able to generate forms that are to a design system at scale.
And Ayushi, what do you think?
I'm going to go with team exciting. I do think that the use of AI in government forms comes with a lot of risk, no doubt. But I think if that risk and if the ethics of implementation are managed well. I was at this session at the very end of our day with Riverside County in California, and they're working on the experience of that birth to 5 family work, with young children. And NAVA and Benefits Navigator and Better Government Lab have all been working on implementing this AI agent solution that streamlines the safety net application for Riverside County residents. And I thought it was just really well done. We're looking at $228 million in unclaimed assistance in 2022 alone. And if you begin to allow for the agent to deal with the eligibility and the application, the renewal, it frees up the navigator to actually work on that relationship with the human on the other end, or the family or the mom with this young child. And I think that's really exciting.
I'm seeing some great comments. I'm seeing claps in the chat. I'm seeing points being given. So keep it up. We love to hear your reflections on the day. But we have another question for our panel. First, we're going to talk to Aishi first. We're talking about accessibility. Should we focus more on plain language or better design? And you can only pick one.
I will pick better design. I think plain language is a form of better design. And I love that. I think it's a high bang for buck. But I'm thinking back to a session I was in at the top of this morning, 9:30 Pacific with the Massachusetts Access team. And they worked on form validation for increased accessibility, particularly for screen reader users. So smart. The idea, so I'll pull out a specific piece. They used OnBlur in their HTML to immediately validate an input and remove the error message before the form had to be resubmitted to basically account for how a screen reader user would proofread without visibility or with low visibility. And that kind of better design is just so smart. And it really allows the form to account for the experiential act of navigating through lots of language without just plain languageifying. And I thought that was great.
I'm seeing some affirmation in the chat, but Brian, what do you think on accessibility?
Honestly, the math section of the SAT was my strong point, so I've got to go with plain language. Like, break it down, keep it simple for me. And I think I was in the session with the folks right in my backyard here in DC, and I really loved their specific guide on how to improve forms, and they really hit home the importance of plain language, folks that may struggle with some reading comprehension. And I'd say, yeah, let's keep the language plain, keep it simple, and allow people to complete those forms.
Danny, plain language or better design? Go.
So I know I have to choose only one. I am really on board with Rebecca's comment in chat that content is design, and I'm all for breaking down the artificial silos between the two. But that said, I think I think plain language is foundational to understanding what the function of a form is, and to ensuring that the form is communicating adequately and effectively with the people it's trying to serve. One of the quotes that I just pulled and wrote down was from Molly Graham at Public Policy Lab, probably 25, 30 minutes ago, who said, when they look at a form, one of the first questions they ask are, what are we saying here and how will it be heard? And I think that, at its core, a form is a method of communication between a person or a group of people and their government. And at the very bottom of that is the government asking information clearly in plain language, in every language that the form's available.
Right, and closing out this question with the designer, Ariel Kennan.
Well, I would tell you design enables great content, and they work hand in hand. I loved an example today from the Massachusetts childcare team and Nava, who presented how their design system and many of the prompts, they're really customizing to the individual family who's applying for childcare and being really specific about the actual steps that they need to take so that they can finish their application and proceed through the process. But that the design system behind it is what actually enables that and has the correct content hierarchy in it as well.
All right, more great comments here in the chat. Make sure you're taking a look there. And a reminder that all of the sessions today were recorded. So if you missed any that our panelists are talking about, you can go back and watch the recordings on the Code for America and the Beck Center YouTube channels. Next question is on interoperability. Is it a better use of time and resources to focus on big cross-agency form fixes or smaller departmental form finessing? Danny, you're up first.
Well, I think obviously, Meredith, I'm seeing your note. You must pick one. Panel, no. They both have value, but I wanted to lift up one example of where I thought cross-agency collaboration was really critical, and that was in the work that I saw from a number of stakeholders in Los Angeles working to revise their disaster recovery process and application, particularly for folks who've lost, in many cases, very close to everything they have, who are trying to recover vital records documents. That's, I think, a prime example of where cross-agency collaboration, in addition to some creative understanding of how policy can be used to remove administrative barriers that might otherwise be sticky, can pay off great dividends, even despite the practical challenges of navigating between different data systems, different standards of proof or verification, and different organizational cultures at different state or municipal entities.
Ariel, what do you think?
I think a lot of people and our residents, as they are approaching government, aren't thinking about the silos that we're organized in our agencies, and certainly not how we split up our forms within single agencies. So I think it's really important that government's looking about how people's life experiences are playing out as they come and interact with their services. So definitely in the category of we need to be working across agencies and serving real people. I love the presentation today from the Arizona Department of Economic Security and Code for America team. They were actually co-presenting with eligibility workers. And I just love hearing their voices and how they were brought in to the design process and thinking about some of those varying agency norms and how they process applications and documents, et cetera, to actually inform the unified application that is being currently built in Arizona.
Ayushi, your thoughts on interoperability?
I mean, imagine if I said interoperability sucks or something, right? Like, obviously it's a very important, very, very important. I think the really question is sort of how, right? How to go about interoperability in an effective way, in a way that uses your team's time for the highest, return for your constituents. And I think what comes to mind for me actually as an example for those that were here, hopefully it's resonated for you all, but the Philadelphia Zero Fare program session with Casey and Nicola coming from the Office of Integrated Data for Evidence and Action IDEA. I thought that was such a cool presentation around how they actually worked not on the form, but behind the form for improved interoperability by threading income verification information from other means tested programs into the Zero Fare program for Philadelphia to basically just auto enroll roughly 40,000 Philadelphia residents. And in just this 2-year pilot, they've provided 10 million free trips across the city. I think that's just such a smart way of using the interoperability of data on the back end instead of this sort of finessing of forms that can sometimes be, a hit or miss, I think, as far as like a return to investment ratio.
All right. And Brian, close us out on this question.
All right, I'm fired up on this one. I think, my point is the finesse is important sometimes. I think, public service is a long game. You could get caught up in these big fixes, taking years to prove your point, to make that change. I'm going with the small. All right. Uh there was a really wise, I think, digital chief officer out of the state of Maryland that said she was really stubborn. And a part of being stubborn and sort of being able to ship often is what allowed her to remain stubborn and to get things done and to stay energized and do these really small fixes. So Aisha, you can have your big, interoperability, stance and point and take and try to go big or go home. But I'm gonna stay small. I'm gonna do the finesse. I'm gonna keep my energy up because I'm gonna be shipping weekly, and that's my hot take.
All right. And we have questions about if there's slight fire alarms going off in the background and other people noticing some popcorn. But we're going to ask a big picture question now for all of our panelists. What is one form fix that you're going to carry with you from today's event? Ariel, start us off.
I was really touched at the end of the Massachusetts section where the team was talking about some of the interactions with actual families and just the reactions that they've had to some of the really sensitive questions that are asked on those questions or on the application and forms they work on. And, taking in that information from people in those interactions, but also that some of those things might be triggering for the people who are doing the work to try to make these services better. And so I think really making sure that we're reminding ourselves to give the space to take care of each other in this work that is hard and a long journey.
All right, Aisha, you're next.
Well, can I just start off by saying how much fun this has been? It's been a lifelong dream to be a sports commentator, and I feel like my dream's finally coming true. So thank you, Kirsten, and to the organizing team for making this happen. Also, really appreciating all the engagement in the chat, not just for our session, but across the day. And so if we can be at all helpful for your teams, please don't hesitate to reach out. Very happy to be on the other end. I think my closing reflection is, forms have come a long way. I feel like I've been working on, it's funny, I came in working on government technology on the inside as a govy across 3 different states and cities, and then at the federal level. And at some point I realized the majority of my job in government modernization, quote unquote, was actually just making the form and the iceberg beneath the form better. And we've come such a long way in how we think of forms, in how we think of whether we even need the form, to Brendan's point in the chat. And I kind of noticed these 3 buckets, I think, in the moment we're at today. One is there still is a form, a human still has to fill it out, but it's less annoying, right? It's become more accessible, it's become better. There's a second bucket of forms that we might not be able to fully remove annoyances from. And we've instead tacked on the sort of AI agent or other sort of robo tool to support the relationship of the human with that form. And then I think the third bucket that I'm noticing increasingly is this sort of no form. right? The automating of eligibility and renewals, removing the human altogether, to allow for them to receive services without the headache of proving their deservingness. And I think, overall, I'll close with just how much it's become evident that the form really is just a Trojan horse for better process, for culture change, and for an improved relationship between the person and its government. And I'm just so grateful to the immense amount of work happening in that direction.
All right, Brian, what's one form fix you're taking with you today?
One thing I'm taking with me is being mindful of the human and actually getting out there and speaking to folks. I heard this as a common thread in two specific sessions that I was in. I think it was one with the folks from Colorado that talked about how they were mainly a Google shop and they didn't really understand until they spoke to people that folks thought Google wasn't professional. They didn't really take the form seriously. They didn't really think it was a space where they could um, offer up like critical information. So they ended up making a switch to a different platform just because of that user feedback. And I think it was also in the field guide in DC. They talked about just getting out there and talking to people. And sometimes you got to throw on a hairnet to do that. And I loved that picture and I loved that example. So getting out there and talking to people, figuring out how your form is landing with folks, keeping that human in the loop is critical. So that's my fix.
All right, and Danny, close us out.
I think I'm really excited and encouraged by the idea of formless forms. The best form is no form at all. I think we're also at a moment where there are a lot of headwinds to trust in the institutions that people are interacting with when they're using a form to petition their government for a service or benefit that they're entitled to receive. So I think one of the most important types of fixes is really sort of plays off of what Brian was saying, getting out there and talking to people, but also finding ways to communicate in the moment of a form interaction itself, a relationship of care between the government and the people that they're serving in ways that hopefully can reinforce trust and enable down the line a greater level of comfort with the kind of data sharing and knowledge sharing between government agencies that's probably ultimately necessary to allow people to access the services that they would otherwise use a form to access, but that they could potentially get with no petition at all.
Well, I want to thank the four of you for joining us today with your hot takes. More than 2,000 form friends joined us and are learning from all of you, as well as all of our wonderful panelists today. I want to thank everyone for joining us for Around the Form and for FormFest 2025. Our fearless form panelists, thank you for bringing your hot takes, and thank you for attending so many great sessions with us today. So this, unfortunately, is the end of FormFest 2025. Please stay tuned for follow-up from FormFest, including our findings, session recordings, session recaps. Check out all of our speaker profiles. But most of all, we are so glad that you all joined us for today's event. And we really hope to see you again soon. Have a great evening, everyone.